Hello once again, internet friends. Welcome back to the Nerd Loft. So good news, everyone! I finally made it back to the cinema. Yes, I know, shocking news, but after 18 months and the longest time of not going to the cinema in my life, I saved it up for one of the films that I am most excited about getting released this year. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film to get released. It is technically the first film of Marvel's Phase 4 to be released that actually furthers the universe. Technically speaking, Black Widow was the first Phase 4 to be released, but that's kind of a step back in time, covering some bases that they ought to have covered a long time ago. But Shang-Chi is the first new offering of a new character in a fresh new world for Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And Shang-Chi, or Sean as he is partially known as in this film, kind of an undercover name, is the son of a warlord turned mob boss who is, technically speaking, the Mandarin, although is not directly referred to as the Mandarin. However, he is the leader of the real 10 Rings and owns the 10 Rings of Power. Now, these 10 Rings of Power are never actually described as to where they have come from, only that they have been on Earth for millennia, and he is the only person to have collected all of them. And by collecting them all together, they give you immeasurable power, eternal youth, and one badass right hook. I did also hear that if you collect all of them, they also give you access to the Chaos Emeralds as well, but that's a Sonic joke. It's alright. Crossing over the streams there. Now, after being trained for half his life, Shang-Chi decides to make his way to America, go into hiding, start a new life as a pretty relatable character. He's kind of not really sure what he's doing with his life. He's working as a valet, goes out partying and karaokeing with his best friend on the evenings, until stuff kind of starts to go wrong and his dad sends an entire mob after him to get him and bring him home because they're going to go looking for this mystical village that is protecting a great evil. And the film kind of goes from street level into recognizable MCU levels from there, but also goes a little bit into spoiler territory, so I'll probably leave that there for now. Now, to say that I have been excited about Shang-Chi getting released in cinemas and coming out as a film and a character that's getting explored in the MCU as a whole, to say that I am excited about this is truly underselling it. Time for a very quick history lesson. Cast your mind back nigh on 20 years when 14-year-old Drew is first starting to get into collecting comic books. Now, 14-year-old Drew is also slightly obsessed with martial arts movies. Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Jet Li. The Marvel Black Label Shang-Chi Master of Kung Fu limited arc was one of the first ever comic books I bought. I was not supposed to buy it, I was not technically old enough to buy it, but I did, and it was amazing. And since that point, I feel like Shang-Chi is this character that's only really been visited when it's been convenient, or when Marvel have kind of come under a little bit of fire for not having a lot of diversity in their characters. There was one amazing story arc in Spider-Man where they brought Shang-Chi in to teach him a brand new style of martial arts when he lost his spider sense. So I want to see that happen in the MCU. But finally, Shang-Chi gets his moment in the spotlight, and it obviously is absolutely nothing to do with the fact that the TV Iron Fist was absolutely catastrophic. Nope, not at all, erasing the fact that they completely screwed up Iron Fist and they still want a character that's martial arts centric in the cinematic universe. Obviously, I'm being a little bit flippant here, really, because in actuality, the film of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings now makes it look like Iron Fist is off somewhere crying and throwing up in fear. If you haven't already got it from what I'm saying, I absolutely loved this film. There was so much to dig about this film. Not only is it a completely fresh take on something in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, reinvigorating it and showing us something that we haven't seen in the universe before, it evolves as the film goes on. It starts out at this very kind of relatable street-level character that's kind of going about his life. Yes, he has a checkered and dark history. His dad is kind of this eternally young warlord mob boss, and he's had to deal with that. He's had to deal with all of the things that he has seen his father, the Mandarin, do throughout his life. He's witnessed firsthand some brutal stuff. But instead, he's trying to move on from that. He's trying to make a life for himself as a regular person and not get dragged back into that. He's got a best friend who he hangs out with in the form of Awkwafina playing Katie, who is, for the most part, the comic relief of the film. There is another character that pops up who is a bigger kind of comic relief. But what I really liked about Awkwafina is that her character might be the comic relief, but she's genuine about it. Some of the things that I've found recently about Marvel Cinematic Universe films is that they don't want to get too bogged down in the tension or the drama of any situation, so they will have a character who comes in at that point to cut through that tension with a joke, with a comment, with something to take that out of the picture. And I kind of thought that that was going to be what Awkwafina was going to do. But instead, they leave that tension there. They don't take away from the tension, and I really appreciated that. There are some moments where Simu Liu is playing Shang-Chi and dealing with the things that he has had to do and seen his father do, and the tension is actually dramatic and stays there. And that has a far bigger impact for the character than it would be if Awkwafina were to come in and say something to alleviate that tension. Instead, she lets him feel it, she is there for him as a best friend, and I think that that makes for a far better character. Now, of course, there are some recognizable Marvel Cinematic Universe points in this film, in particular the big climax at the end. It is a little bit CG heavy, it is a little bit fantastical, but I like how the film evolves into that. It all starts off as folklore, fairy tales, hearsay, rumors. This doesn't really exist. As the film goes on, you discover more and more and more about this ancient city that can only be reached at certain points of the year. And if you know how to get there, and if you have the right map, and if you have the right timing, and everything like that, and it's cut off from the rest of civilization, and they are there all as protectors of the realm from this massive evil that they're trying to keep back. And I know it's a small thing, but I actually really dug what they did with the actual 10 rings of power. In comics canon, they are meant to be a lot like the Infinity Stones. There are 10 rings, you wear them on your fingers, and each one has a different power. In this film, they have them as almost like the weight rings that martial artists train with to make their punches faster and better and stronger. Now, obviously, I cannot talk about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings without talking about the fight choreography in this film. Now, I have to say, I seriously loved the fight choreography. I'm struggling to think of a Marvel Cinematic Universe film where the fight sequences were as perfectly choreographed and well filmed and looking as fluid and beautiful as they did in this film as any other one other than Captain America Winter Soldier. That's the only other one that really comes to mind. And Simu Liu does a brilliant job in this. You can tell that for at least part of these fight sequences, it's actually him. And when these fight sequences were going, I just had the biggest smile on my face watching these sequences play out. I was just like, this is everything that I want from a martial arts film. It's a lot of what I want from a superhero film, and I am so glad that this was the first film that I went back to see after 18 months of not going to the cinema. Now, I also have to say, as far as villains go, the fact that the villain of this piece is Shang-Chi's father does create a huge moral dilemma. He's not exactly a forgettable villain, but I really liked how there was the heart involved and the duality of, yes, this person is a bad person, but he's also my father and my family. And while it doesn't always seem that he cares about me, I know that actually he does care about me, and he's just doing really bad things that need to be stopped. Now, there wasn't exactly a cathartic end or conclusion to that, I felt. I would have liked them to maybe have a little bit more of a delve into that. And I know it's only another really small thing, but for me, it's some of these small things that really elevate Shang-Chi above some of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe films that I have seen. I loved all of the sights of San Francisco that you see in the first hour or so of this film. I was literally sat there pointing out, going, we've been there, I've been there, we've been there, oh my goodness, we've been there as well. It's a small thing, I know, but it's just something I also really enjoyed about the film. So ultimately, I really dug Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I definitely think that it is worthy of the hype that it is getting at the moment. So, with that in mind, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings gets 4.5 stars from me. It's very close to a 5-star film, I will admit that. I don't know too much of what could have elevated it to a 5-star status, but it's very close for me. I absolutely dug this film. I would immediately go back and watch it again. But the best thing about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is that this is one of the best introductions of a new character into the Marvel Cinematic Universe without having to explain why they weren't around during Endgame, why they weren't around during Infinity War, why they couldn't have stepped in at any point, what they've been doing this entire time. He's been living a life. He's been trying to escape his past. He's been trying not to do that, is what he's been doing. And I dug that. I thought that this was a great film. And I honestly think this might now be, dare I say it, in my top 5 Marvel movies? We'll have to think about that one. I'll have to reassess it. Maybe. So, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? What was your favorite part of the movie? No spoilers from me here today. I may do a spoiler review. We'll see how it goes. What do you think the future holds for Shang-Chi as a character in the wider Marvel Cinematic Universe? Do you think we're gonna see him cropping up in some other films soon? And what do you think Shang-Chi's follow-up film will involve? All comments are welcome in the comment section below. Let's talk nerdy. Don't forget, we are still releasing our podcast, Back to the Reviewture, available across all podcast platforms. Take a look at it, give a listen. If you enjoy it, subscribe and rate on your podcast player. If you don't enjoy it, tell someone you don't like. It's a cruel trick on them. As always, if you've enjoyed what you've seen here and you would like to see some more, you can click right here to subscribe and see some more funky, fresh videos from yours truly. And until next time, I have got to get me one of those bow staffs. Seriously. I said this while the film was going on. I have got to get me one of those bow staffs. Those are incredible. Someone out there, hook me up.